73% of people will wake up tomorrow and repeat today exactly. Not approximately. Not roughly. Exactly. The same alarm. The same hesitation. The same scroll through their phone before their feet hit the floor. And here is what no one tells you. It is not a discipline problem. It is not a motivation problem. A 2019 study from Duke University found that 43% of daily actions are not decisions at all. They are loops. Automated scripts running in the background of your life. You are not living one timeline. You are stuck replaying the same one. But you already sensed this, do you not? That strange feeling when another month ends and you cannot remember what made it different from the last one. That quiet frustration when you set a goal in January, feel motivated in February, and find yourself right back where you started by March. That repeating pattern where you consume another book, another video, another podcast, and feel inspired for exactly 72 hours before the old version of you takes the wheel again. This is not a character flaw. This is physics, not metaphorical physics. Actual physics, the kind that governs how your brain encodes behavior. The kind that explains why 88% of New Year's resolutions fail, according to research from the University of Scranton. The kind that reveals a terrifying truth most self-help will never tell you. You are not struggling to change because you lack willpower. You are struggling because you are trying to change your actions while running the same identity code that created those actions in the first place. Let me say that again, because this single idea will reshape everything you think you know about personal transformation. You cannot outwork your identity. You cannot discipline your way past it. You cannot motivate yourself beyond it. Your identity is the operating system. Your habits are just the apps. And right now, you are trying to install new apps on an operating system that keeps rejecting them. Here is the insight that changes everything. Your life is not a single story. It is a branching tree of possibilities. Every single day, you encounter what I call fork points, micro moments where your timeline splits. That moment when your alarm goes off and you choose snooze or rise. That moment when you open your laptop and choose deep work or distraction. That moment when someone offers you an opportunity and you choose fear or action. Each of these moments is invisible. They feel small, insignificant, just another Tuesday. But MIT's Human Dynamics Laboratory tracked over 10,000 decision points across hundreds of subjects and found something remarkable. The difference between high performers and everyone else was not intelligence. It was not talent. It was not even effort. It was the quality of their decisions at fork points. The top performers made slightly better choices at these branching moments. Not dramatically better, just 5 to 8% better on average. But those tiny advantages compounded. Day after day, week after week, until two people who started at the exact same point ended up in completely different realities. Two different lives, two different outcomes. Same starting point, different forks. Now, I need you to pause whatever else you are doing right now, because what I am about to share with you is not theory. It is not motivation. It is the actual mechanism that determines which version of your life you are going to live. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Think about someone you know who seems to have it together. Someone whose career, health, relationships, or energy level makes you wonder what they have that you do not. Here is the uncomfortable truth. They do not have more hours than you do. They do not have more discipline than you do. They are not smarter than you are. They are simply running a different identity code. And that code makes their four-point decisions automatic. They do not have to think about whether to work out. They do not have to summon willpower to focus. They do not have to fight themselves every morning. Their defaults are different. And defaults, as Stanford's Behavior Design Lab discovered, account for over 90% of human behavior. Not 90% of habits. 90% of everything. Average performers try to change their actions through willpower. They set goals. They write lists. They use motivation like a battery, draining it until nothing is left. When the battery dies, they blame themselves. They conclude they are not disciplined enough, not committed enough, not good enough. Then they wait for the next wave of inspiration to charge the battery again, and the cycle repeats. Elite performers do something completely different. They do not fight their defaults. They reprogram them. They understand that willpower is not a strategy. It is a patch, a temporary fix that always fails. So instead of trying to out-effort their old identity, they install a new one. They shift from trying to become someone to simply operating as that person now. The difference sounds subtle. It is not. It is the difference between pushing a boulder uphill every single day versus rolling it downhill once and letting gravity do the work. Here is a tactic you can apply tonight. Before you go to sleep, answer this single question in your mind. What would the next version of me do first thing tomorrow morning? Do not answer with what you should do. Do not answer with what you wish you would do. Answer with what the upgraded version of you, the one who already lives in your desired reality, would do automatically. Then, here is the critical step. When you wake up tomorrow, do not decide what to do. Simply execute what you already decided. The decision was made last night. Tomorrow morning is just implementation. This is called a decision script, and research from NYU's psychology department shows that pre-made decisions reduce the cognitive load of action by up to 74%. You are not using willpower. You are using a script. And scripts do not get tired. Scripts do not lose motivation. Scripts just run. We will build an entire library of these decision scripts later in this book. But for now, just test this one. One night, one decision, one morning. And notice what happens when you remove the negotiation from your first waking moment. Here is another 4-point where timelines split. Average performers ask, how do I get motivated to do this? Elite performers ask, how do I make this automatic so I do not need motivation? The first question keeps you dependent on an emotional state that fluctuates constantly. Some days you feel it. Most days you do not. And every day you do not feel it becomes evidence that change is not for you, that you are not the kind of person who can sustain this, that maybe you should just accept who you are. The second question leads somewhere entirely different. It leads to systems, to environmental design, to identity architecture. It acknowledges a truth that neuroscience confirmed decades ago. Motivation is not a renewable resource. It is a spark, useful for ignition, useless for sustaining combustion. If your transformation depends on staying motivated, your transformation has an expiration date. The only changes that last are the ones that become who you are, not what you do. Consider this. A 2009 study published in the European Journal of Social Psychology tracked participants as they formed new habits. The researchers expected habit formation to take 21 days, which is the popular myth you have probably heard. What they actually found was shocking. The average time for a behavior to become automatic was 66 days. But here is the part no one talks about. The range was 18 to 254 days. Some behaviors locked in quickly. Others took over 8 months. What determined the difference? It was not the complexity of the habit. It was not the person's discipline level. It was identity alignment. The habits that became automatic fastest were the ones that matched who the person believed they were. The habits that took longest, or never formed at all, were the ones fighting against an existing identity. You cannot bolt a new habit onto an old identity and expect it to hold. The identity will reject it like a body rejects a mismatched organ. This is why so many people experience the same frustrating pattern. Initial excitement, early progress, gradual fade, total collapse, and then guilt followed by another attempt at the next new year. They are not failing at habits. They are failing at identity, and no one taught them the difference. So here is what we are going to do together over the next 30 days. We are not going to chase motivation. We are not going to make another list of things you should do. We are not going to pretend that you just need to try harder, want it more, or finally get serious. Instead, we are going to do something that actually works. We are going to run a complete reality audit on your current life, identifying exactly where your 4 points are, which decisions are splitting your timeline in the wrong direction, and which identity code is running in the background. Then we are going to install a new operating system. I call it the reality shift trinity. 3 layers that work together. Your identity layer, which determines what you believe is possible and natural for you. Your decision layer, which governs the automatic choices you make at 4 points. And your environment layer, which locks your new reality into place so you do not have to rely on memory or motivation. Each layer reinforces the others. Change your identity, and your decisions shift. Shift your decisions, and your environment follows. Design your environment, and it protects your identity. The three become a self-reinforcing loop. And once that loop is spinning, staying in your new reality becomes easier than falling back into your old one. But here is what I need you to understand before we go any further. The reason your life keeps repeating is not bad luck. It is not a lack of discipline. It is not that change is impossible for you. The reason is simple. You have been trying to build a new life on top of an old identity. And that never works. The old identity always wins. Always. In the next chapter, we are going to expose exactly how your current identity code was installed, most of it without your consent. We are going to reveal the 3 invisible scripts that are running your life right now. And you are going to see, with uncomfortable clarity, why you keep making the same choices even when you know better. Because knowing better and doing better are not the same thing. And the gap between them is not filled with motivation. It is filled with identity. Your next life is not waiting for you to feel ready. It is waiting for you to shift. Chapter 2. The Identity Glitch. You're running outdated code. By age 7, 95% of your identity was already written, and you had no say in it. This is not philosophy. This is neuroscience. Dr. Bruce Lipton's research at Stanford University's School of Medicine found that between birth and age 7, your brain operates primarily in theta wave state, the same state hypnotherapists use to implant suggestions. During those years, you were not analyzing information. You were downloading it. Every belief your parents held, every limitation your environment implied, every story about who you are and what you deserve. It all went straight in. No filter, no consent, no choice. And here's the part that should alarm you. That code is still running. Right now. Today. Decades later. It is running when you hesitate before asking for a raise. It is running when you scroll instead of starting. It is running when you sabotage your own progress 3 weeks into a new routine. You think you are making conscious decisions. You are not. You are executing programs that were installed before you could spell your own name. The University of California, San Francisco published a study showing that the average person has approximately 60,000 thoughts per day. That sounds like a lot of mental activity, like a lot of conscious processing. But here is the disturbing finding. 95% of those thoughts are the same thoughts you had yesterday, and the day before, and the day before that. You are not thinking new thoughts. You are replaying old ones. And those old thoughts are generating old emotions. And those old emotions are driving old decisions. And those old decisions are creating the same old reality you have been living in for years. This is the identity glitch. You believe you are choosing your life. In reality, your life is being generated by code you did not write, running on hardware you did not design, producing outputs you did not request. And until you see that code, until you drag it into the light and examine it, you will keep wondering why you cannot seem to change no matter how hard you try. Let me show you exactly how this works. Your brain has one primary job: keep you alive. Not make you happy, not help you succeed, not fulfill your potential, just keep you breathing. And the most efficient way to keep you alive is to predict what comes next based on what came before. This is why your brain loves patterns. Patterns are efficient. Patterns are safe. Patterns require less energy than constant analysis. So your brain takes your repeated experiences and turns them into automatic programs. Walk into a dark room. You reach for the light switch without thinking. Someone asks your name. You answer without conscious effort. Your alarm goes off. You execute whatever sequence you have executed thousands of times before. This is called automaticity, and it is supposed to help you. It is supposed to free up mental resources for complex problems by handling the routine stuff in the background. But here is where it becomes a trap. Your brain does not distinguish between helpful patterns and harmful ones. It does not evaluate whether a behavior is good for you. It only evaluates whether that behavior is familiar. And familiar, to your brain, equals safe. Unfamiliar equals threat. This is why change feels so hard. You are not just fighting a bad habit. You are fighting your brain's survival system. Every time you try to act differently than your identity code predicts, your brain registers it as danger. It floods you with resistance, discomfort, anxiety, the overwhelming urge to return to normal. And most people interpret that resistance as a sign that change is not for them. They think the discomfort means stop. It does not. It means you are finally disrupting the pattern. Now stop for a moment and consider the implications of what I just told you. If your identity was installed before age 7, and that identity is still generating your thoughts, emotions, and behaviors today, then who is actually running your life? Not you. Not the conscious, adult version of you that set goals and made plans and bought this audiobook because you wanted to change. That version of you has almost no control over your daily actions. The version running your life is a 7-year-old. A 7-year-old who learned that asking for things leads to disappointment, or that success requires suffering, or that you are not the kind of person who finishes what you start, or that people like you do not achieve things like that. Whatever that child learned, that child still believes. And that child is making your decisions. I know this sounds dramatic, but researchers at Harvard's Implicit Association Project have spent over 2 decades proving that our conscious beliefs and our automatic behaviors are often completely different. You can consciously believe you deserve success while your automatic programming sabotages every opportunity. You can consciously want to be healthy while your automatic behaviors choose comfort food every time stress hits. The conscious mind sets intentions. The subconscious mind runs the show. And when they conflict, the subconscious wins. Every single time. This is the first major fork where average performers and elite performers diverge. Average performers try to overpower their subconscious with conscious effort. They set goals. They make promises. They use willpower like a battering ram, trying to force new behaviors through the resistance. Sometimes it works for a few days, maybe even a few weeks. But eventually, the subconscious wins. It always does, because you cannot stay consciously vigilant forever. The moment you get tired, stressed, distracted, or overwhelmed, the old programming takes over. Elite performers take a completely different approach. They do not try to overpower the subconscious. They reprogram it. They understand that fighting yourself is an exhausting war you will always lose. So instead of battling their identity code, they rewrite it. They install new beliefs at the subconscious level. They make the new behavior feel familiar instead of foreign. When the new identity code runs automatically, willpower becomes irrelevant. The behavior just happens, not because you forced it, because it is who you are now. Here is how you begin to see your own code. For the next 24 hours, I want you to notice every time you use the phrase, I am, followed by something limiting. I am not a morning person. I am bad with money. I am not creative. I am always late. I am just not disciplined. These statements feel like descriptions. They are not. They are instructions. Every time you say, I am something, you are reinforcing that identity code. You are telling your subconscious, this is who we are. Keep generating behaviors that match. Dr. Andrew Newberg at Thomas Jefferson University studied the neurological impact of self-referential statements. He found that I am phrases activate the brain's default mode network, the same network responsible for your sense of self. When you say, I am not a morning person, you are literally wiring that belief deeper into your identity. So here is the shift. Replace I am with I have been. I have been struggling with mornings. I have been inconsistent with money. I have been avoiding creative work. This tiny linguistic change does something powerful. It moves the pattern from identity to history. It implies that this is something you experienced, not something you are. And what you experienced can change. What you are feels permanent. This is not positive thinking. This is neurological precision. You are using language to disrupt the automatic reinforcement of limiting code. Here is another place where timelines split. Average performers define themselves by their past. They look at their track record and conclude that it predicts their future. They say things like, I have always been this way. I have never been able to stick to things. This is just who I am. They treat their history as prophecy, as if the fact that something happened before means it must happen again. Elite performers understand something different. Your past does not determine your future. Your identity determines your future, and your identity can be rewritten today, right now, in this moment. The person you were yesterday has no authority over the person you become tomorrow unless you keep giving them that authority. A 2020 study from the University of Pennsylvania examined people who had made dramatic life changes, recovering addicts, career transformers, people who overcame severe trauma. The researchers expected to find some common external factor: better resources, more support, lucky breaks. What they found instead was an internal shift. Every single person who successfully transformed their life reported the same thing. At some point, they stopped identifying with their past self. They stopped saying, "I am an addict," and started saying, "I am someone who is building a new life." They stopped saying, "I am stuck," and started saying, "I am in transition." The change in language preceded the change in behavior. The identity shift came first. The results followed. Here is something that should stop you in your tracks. Research published in Psychological Science found that people make an average of 35,000 decisions per day. 35,000. From what to eat to how to respond to an email to whether to keep reading or check your phone. Of those 35,000 decisions, 99% are made automatically, below conscious awareness, by your default programming. That means roughly 34,650 decisions every day are not really decisions at all. They are outputs of your identity code. Automatic responses, pattern completions. If you want to change your life, you do not need to change 35,000 decisions. That is impossible. No one has that much willpower. You need to change the code that is making those decisions for you. This is why typical advice fails. Telling someone to make better choices is useless when their identity is making the choices before they even become conscious of them. It is like telling someone to stop a car by grabbing the wheels while ignoring the engine. The engine is identity. The wheels are just where the rubber meets the road. And if you want to change direction, you must go under the hood. So what exactly is running in your code right now? After analyzing thousands of case studies, I have identified 3 invisible scripts that sabotage most transformation attempts. Nearly everyone has at least one. Most people have all 3. Script 1, the worthiness script. This is the deep belief that you do not deserve the outcome you are chasing. You might want success, but somewhere in your code is a line that says people like you do not get that. So you sabotage. You hesitate. You find ways to fail that look like bad luck, but are actually self-fulfilling prophecy. Script 2, the safety script. This is the belief that staying small keeps you safe. That visibility brings criticism. That achievement brings pressure. That change brings loss. So your code keeps you comfortable. Stuck, but comfortable. Because to your 7-year-old programming, stuck is safer than exposed. Script 3, the effort script. This is the belief that transformation should be hard. That suffering is required. That if it feels easy, it does not count. So you make everything harder than it needs to be. You choose struggle over strategy. You burn out instead of building systems. And when things start working smoothly, you unconsciously introduce chaos because ease does not match your code. These scripts are invisible. They run in the background. And they will undermine every goal you set until you find them and rewrite them. In the next chapter, we are going to do something uncomfortable. We are going to run a complete diagnostic on your current reality. Not the reality you show others. Not the reality you tell yourself about. The actual reality. The one your choices are creating while you are not paying attention. We are going to identify your specific fork points. The exact moments in your day where your timeline is splitting in the wrong direction. Most people have between 5 and 8 of these critical junctures, and they are completely blind to them. We are going to expose which version of you is making decisions at those forks. Is it the conscious you or the 7-year-old code? And we are going to map your current trajectory so you can see, with brutal clarity, exactly where your life is heading if nothing changes. This is not about judgment. This is about awareness. Because you cannot shift a reality you cannot see. And right now, there is a version of your life that you have never examined closely. It is time to look. Your reality audit starts now. Chapter 3, Your Reality Audit, Mapping the Decision Points. There are exactly 6 moments today that will determine where your life is 1 year from now. And you have already missed 3 of them. This is not exaggeration. This is mathematics. Researchers at Cornell University discovered that the average person makes 226 decisions about food alone each day. Most of them invisible. Most of them automatic. Most of them pulling you toward one future or another without your conscious awareness. But here is what their research revealed that changes everything. Only 6 to 8 decisions per day actually move the needle. The rest is noise. And if you cannot identify which 6 matter, you are steering your life blindfolded. Think about what this means. You are not drowning in 35,000 equally important choices. You are drowning in 35,000 distractions that hide the 6 that actually matter. And because you cannot see which ones count, you waste your limited willpower on decisions that change nothing while sleepwalking through the ones that change everything. This is why people feel exhausted but stuck. They are spending energy. They are making choices. They are doing things all day long, but they are doing them in the wrong places. The high-leverage 4 points pass by unnoticed while they agonize over what to have for lunch. Today, that changes. We are going to run what I call a reality audit. This is not a personality test. This is not a journaling exercise. This is a systematic examination of where your timeline actually splits each day and which version of you is showing up at those critical junctions. Because here is the truth that most self-help ignores. You do not need to change everything. You do not need to overhaul your entire life. You do not need to become a completely different person by next week. You need to change 6 decisions, the right 6, and you need to change who is making them. Let me introduce you to a concept that will reshape how you see your days. I call them 4 points. These are the specific moments where your timeline branches, where one choice leads toward your desired reality and another choice leads back to the loop you have been stuck in. 4 points have 3 characteristics that make them different from ordinary decisions. First, they are recurring. They happen at roughly the same time, in roughly the same context, almost every day. Your alarm going off is a 4 point. The moment you sit down at your desk is a 4 point. The hour after dinner is a 4 point. These are not one-time choices. They are daily junctions. Second, they are compounding. A single 4-point decision seems insignificant. Hitting snooze once does not ruin your life. Checking social media for 5 minutes does not destroy your goals. But 4 points compound. 100 snooze buttons become a pattern of avoidance. 100 5-minute scrolls become 500 hours of lost time. The individual choice is small. The accumulated impact is massive. Third, and this is crucial, they have a default. Every 4 point has a path of least resistance, a direction your autopilot will take if you do not consciously intervene. And that default was set by your identity code, the programming we exposed in the last chapter. Your job in this audit is to identify your 4 points, recognize your current defaults, and see clearly which direction each one is pulling you. Now I need you to do something with me right now. Think about yesterday, not the whole day, just the first 2 hours after you woke up. What happened? Not what you wish happened, not what you plan to happen. What actually happened, decision by decision, from the moment your eyes opened. Did you wake up before your alarm or after it? Did you get up immediately or linger? What was the first thing you looked at? The ceiling, your phone, your partner. What did you do in the first 15 minutes? The first 30? Most people cannot answer these questions with any precision. The morning is a blur, a sequence they have repeated so many times it no longer registers as individual choices. But buried in that blur are your first 3-4 points of the day, the ones that set the trajectory for everything that follows. Research from the University of Nottingham found that morning decisions create what they called choice momentum, a psychological inertia that carries through subsequent hours. Win your first 4 point, and the second becomes easier. Lose it, and you are fighting uphill the rest of the day. This is why mornings matter so much. Not because of some productivity guru's obsession with 5 a.m. wake-ups, but because mornings contain 4 points that compound faster than any others. Here is where the split happens. Average performers let their mornings happen to them. They wake up in reaction mode. The alarm is an interruption. The phone is a reflex. The morning unfolds without intention, driven entirely by whatever feels easiest in that groggy state. By the time they are fully conscious, 3 or 4 points have already passed, all of them defaulting to the old pattern. Elite performers design their mornings before they happen. They know exactly what their first 4 point is. They have already decided what they will do at that junction, and they have removed the friction that would make the old default easier than the new choice. This is not about willpower. This is about architecture. Elite performers do not win their mornings by being stronger. They win by making the right choice easier than the wrong one before the moment even arrives. A study from the University of Chicago's Booth School of Business examined why some people consistently make better decisions than others. The answer was not self-control. People with high self-control did not resist temptation more successfully. They encountered temptation less frequently. They had designed their environments and routines to avoid the fork points where they knew they would fail. They did not fight harder. They fought smarter. They chose their battles before the battle began. Here is how you identify your personal fork points. For the next 3 days, I want you to run what I call the decision tracker. This is not complicated, but it requires honesty. At 4 moments each day, mid-morning, early afternoon, evening, and before bed, pause for 60 seconds and ask yourself one question. In the last few hours, where did I have a choice, and which direction did I go? Do not judge. Do not analyze. Just notice. You are looking for the recurring moments, the junctions that show up every day, the places where you consistently face the same choice between two paths. By the end of 3 days, patterns will emerge. You will see the same fork points appearing again and again. Your morning alarm, the mid-afternoon energy dip, the evening choice between productive wind down and passive consumption, the moment before bed when you decide tomorrow's first action or let it remain undefined. Most people have between 5 and 8 major fork points. You do not need to find all of them yet. You need to find your top 3, the ones that show up most frequently and seem to have the biggest ripple effects. Write them down. Name them. Because a fork point you can name is a fork point you can change. This reveals another critical difference. Average performers are blind to their fork points. They experience their days as a continuous flow rather than a series of discrete junctions. Because they cannot see the branching moments, they cannot intervene at those moments. They try to change their whole day or their lifestyle or their habits in some vague, general sense. And vague efforts produce vague results. Elite performers see their days as decision trees. They know exactly where the branches are. They know which branches matter and which ones do not. And they focus their limited energy on winning the junctions that actually move the needle. This is why elite performers often seem to have more willpower. They do not. They have more precision. They are not spending energy everywhere. They are spending it at the fork points that compound. The MIT Age Lab conducted a study tracking how people allocate mental energy throughout the day. They found that high performers did not have larger reserves of self-control. They had better allocation. They conserved energy on low-stakes decisions, what to wear, what to eat, how to respond to minor requests, and deployed it strategically at high-stakes junctions. The average person treats every decision as if it matters equally. The elite performer knows that some decisions are worth fighting for, and most are not. Here is a number that should change how you approach your days. Research from Florida State University found that the average person has approximately 4 hours of peak cognitive function per day. 4 hours, not 8, not 12, 4. During those 4 hours, your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for complex decisions, long-term thinking, and impulse control, operates at full capacity. Outside those hours, it is diminished. You can still function. You can still work. But your ability to make high-quality decisions at fork points is significantly reduced. This means something profound for your reality audit. If you are encountering your most important fork points during your low-energy hours, you are almost guaranteed to lose them. Your autopilot will take over because your conscious override system is running on fumes. The solution is not to have more willpower. The solution is to schedule your critical fork points during your peak hours, and to make your default behaviors so well-designed that losing a fork point outside peak hours does not matter. This is why environment design and decision scripts, which we will build in the coming chapters, are so essential. You cannot be at peak performance all day, but you can build systems that win even when you are not. Let me give you the complete framework you will use over the next 48 hours. Step 1. Identify your fork points. Use the decision tracker method I described. Find the recurring junctions. Name your top 3. Step 2. Determine your current default. At each fork point, what do you automatically do when you are not consciously choosing? This is your identity code in action. This is the 7-year-old running the show. Do not judge it. Just see it clearly. Step 3. Define your desired response. At each fork point, what would the next version of you do? Not the perfect version. Not the superhuman version. Just one level up from where you are now. What would that person choose at this junction? Step 4. Calculate the gap. How far is your current default from your desired response? Is it a small adjustment or a complete reversal? This gap tells you how much identity work is required. Step 5. Identify the friction. What makes the default easy and the desired response hard? Is it environmental, emotional, social, something else? The friction is what we will engineer around in the chapters ahead. This audit is not meant to make you feel bad about your current choices. It is meant to make those choices visible, because invisible patterns control you. Visible patterns can be changed. You now have the diagnostic tool. You can see where your timeline splits and which direction you are currently going at each junction. But seeing is not enough. In the next chapter, I am going to give you the most powerful intervention in this entire system. A 7-minute daily protocol that does not just help you win your fork points. It rewires the defaults themselves. This is not another morning routine. This is not meditation or journaling or affirmations in isolation. This is a precision-engineered sequence based on research from the fields of cognitive psychology, habit formation, and identity reconstruction. It takes 7 minutes. It runs every morning. And within 14 days, your fork-point defaults will begin shifting automatically. I call it the reality lock protocol. And it is the engine that makes everything else in this system work. Most people try to change their decisions one at a time, fighting each fork point as it comes. That is exhausting. That is unsustainable. That is why most transformation attempts fail by week 3. The reality lock protocol does something different. It changes the decision maker. It updates the code. And when the code changes, the decisions change without the fight. You have done the audit. You have mapped the terrain. Now it is time to install the system that will shift it. Chapter 4. The 7-minute reality lock protocol. The difference between people who transform and people who stay stuck is not found in their goals. It is found in what they do in the first 7 minutes after waking up. Not the first hour. Not the first 30 minutes. 7 minutes. That is all it takes to shift from autopilot to architect. Research from the University of Toronto's psychology department found that the brain is most neuroplastic, most capable of rewiring, in the 20 minutes immediately following sleep. Your identity code is temporarily unlocked. The patterns are loosened. The defaults are vulnerable. Miss this window, and you spend the rest of the day fighting hardened programming. Capture it, and you rewrite the code before it even boots up. This is why most morning routines fail. They are too long. They require too much. They demand that you summon motivation and discipline before your conscious mind is even fully online. An hour-long morning routine sounds impressive until you are exhausted, stressed, or running late, and then it collapses entirely. The reality lock protocol is different. It is not a routine. It is an intervention. A surgical strike on your identity code during the exact window when that code can be rewritten. 7 minutes is short enough that you will actually do it every single day, and precise enough that it targets the specific mechanisms that govern your fork point behavior. I did not design this protocol based on what sounds good. I designed it based on what the research says actually works. The protocol has 3 phases. Each phase targets one layer of the reality shift trinity we introduced earlier. Phase 1 rewrites your identity layer. Phase 2 programs your decision layer. Phase 3 locks your environment layer. Together, they create a self-reinforcing loop that carries through your entire day. You do not need a journal for this. You do not need an app. You do not need silence or solitude or perfect conditions. You need 7 minutes and your own mind. That is all. Let me walk you through each phase. Phase 1 is called identity activation. It takes 2 minutes. Here is what happens in your brain when you first wake up. Your prefrontal cortex, the rational, planning part, comes online slowly. But your subconscious mind, it is already running. It has been running all night. And in those first waking moments, it is looking for instructions. It is asking, who are we today? What version of me should I load? If you do not answer that question consciously, your subconscious will answer it automatically. It will load yesterday's identity, last week's identity, last year's identity, the same code that has been generating the same results you are trying to escape. Identity activation intercepts that process. Here is exactly what you do. Before you check your phone, before you get out of bed, before you do anything else, you complete 3 sentences out loud or in your mind. Sentence 1. I am someone who. And you complete it with one identity statement aligned with your desired reality. Not, I am someone who wants to be productive. That is aspiration. I am someone who protects their focus. That is identity. Sentence 2. Today, I will prove this by. And you name one specific action you will take today that reinforces that identity. Not a goal, not a wish. A concrete behavior you control completely. Sentence 3. The old version of me would, but I no longer operate that way. This one is critical. You are explicitly acknowledging the old code and declaring that it no longer runs your system. 3 sentences, 60 to 90 seconds. You have just told your subconscious which version to load. Dr. Ethan Kross at the University of Michigan studied what he calls self-distancing, the practice of referring to yourself in declarative terms. His research found that this simple linguistic shift reduced anxiety, improved decision-making, and increased follow-through on intended behaviors by up to 32%. You are not just saying words. You are programming your operating system for the day ahead. Now, phase 2. This is called decision scripting. It takes 3 minutes. Remember what we established in the last chapter. You have 5 to 8 4 points each day where your timeline actually splits. And the research from Florida State showed you only have about 4 hours of peak cognitive function. The problem is obvious. Your 4 points do not always happen during your peak hours. The mid-afternoon energy dip, the after-dinner slump, the late-night temptation. These are high-stakes junctions that occur when your willpower is depleted. Decision scripting solves this. During your 3 minutes of decision scripting, you pre-make the decisions for your top 3-4 points before you encounter them. You use what psychologists call implementation intentions, specific if-then statements that program your response in advance. Here is the formula. When I encounter fork point, I will specific response, because I am identity statement. For example, when my alarm goes off, I will place my feet on the floor within 3 seconds, because I am someone who starts strong. Another example, when I feel the urge to check social media during deep work, I will take 3 breaths and return to my task, because I am someone who protects their focus. One more. When I finish dinner, I will set out my clothes and bag for tomorrow, because I am someone who prepares for success. Notice the structure. The 4 point is named specifically. The response is concrete and physical. And the identity statement ties the action back to who you are becoming. Research from New York University found that implementation intentions increase follow-through rates from approximately 30% to over 90%. That is not a marginal improvement. That is a transformation. You are not deciding in the moment. You decided this morning. The moment is just execution. This is one of the most significant splits between average and elite performers. Average performers make decisions at the fork point. They encounter the junction, weigh their options, assess how they feel, and choose in real time. This sounds reasonable. It is actually a disaster. Because at the fork point, your energy is variable. Your emotions are variable. Your environment is pressing against you. The default has all the momentum. Elite performers make decisions before the fork point. They use their peak morning cognition to program their responses in advance. By the time they reach the junction, the decision is already made. There is nothing to weigh, nothing to debate. The script runs automatically. This is why elite performers seem to have superhuman discipline. They do not. They have pre-made decisions. They have removed the negotiation from the moment. A study published in the British Journal of Health Psychology tracked 2 groups trying to build an exercise habit. The first group was given motivation, information about why exercise matters, encouragement to commit, standard goal-setting support. The second group was given one additional tool. They wrote down exactly when and where they would exercise using an if-then format. The results were staggering. In the motivation-only group, 35% followed through. In the implementation intention group, 91% followed through. Same people, same goal, same motivation levels, different results. The only variable was decision scripting. Here is how to make your decision script stick. When you write your 3 if-then statements each morning, do not just think them. Visualize them. See yourself at the fork point. See the temptation or the resistance. And then see yourself executing the script successfully. This is not positive thinking. This is mental rehearsal. Neuroscientists at the University of Chicago examined brain scans of people physically practicing a skill versus mentally rehearsing it. They found that mental rehearsal activated nearly identical neural pathways as physical practice. Your brain cannot fully distinguish between a vividly imagined action and a real one. When you visualize yourself executing your decision script, you are running a simulation. You are training the neural pathway before you need it. So when the real fork point arrives, your brain has already practiced the correct response. 30 seconds of visualization per decision script. That is 90 seconds total inside your 3-minute window. Use the remaining 90 seconds to verbalize the scripts, either out loud or internally. By the end of phase 2, you have programmed your top 3 fork points. You know exactly what you will do. You have rehearsed the correct response. And you have tied each response to your identity. Phase 3 is called environment lock. It takes 2 minutes. This phase ensures that your physical and digital environment supports the identity you activated and the decisions you scripted. Because here is what most people miss. You can have perfect intentions and still fail if your environment is working against you. Your environment is not neutral. It is either reinforcing your new identity or reinforcing your old one. There is no in-between. In your 2 minutes of environment lock, you answer 3 questions and take 1 action. Question 1. What is one thing in my physical space that will help me when my fork points today? Maybe it is placing your workout clothes next to your bed. Maybe it is putting your phone in another room during work hours. Maybe it is clearing your desk before you start. Identify it. Question 2. What is one thing in my digital environment that I need to adjust? This might mean closing tabs, turning off notifications, or setting your phone to do not disturb during your peak focus hours. Identify it. Question 3. What is one friction point I can remove or add? Removing friction makes good behaviors easier. Adding friction makes bad behaviors harder. Both work. Identify 1. Now the action. Execute one of these adjustments immediately. Right now, before you leave phase 3. This is not about perfect environment design. That takes longer. This is about one adjustment, one change, one intervention that tilts the playing field in your favor today. Here is the final split this chapter reveals. Average performers rely on willpower to override their environment. They work with distractions visible. They keep temptations accessible. They fight their surroundings every day, exhausting themselves in battles they did not need to fight. Elite performers shape their environment to make willpower unnecessary. They put the phone in another room because they know they will check it if it is within reach. They remove junk food from the house because they know they will eat it if it is visible. They close the browser tabs because they know they will click if the option exists. A landmark study from the University of Cambridge tracked students' academic performance and found that environment design was a stronger predictor of success than IQ, motivation, or self-reported discipline. The students who performed best were not smarter or more driven. They had built environments that made distraction difficult and focus automatic. Your environment is either a tailwind or a headwind. After your 2-minute environment lock, it becomes a tailwind. Let me give you the complete protocol in one sequence so you can see how it flows. You wake up. Before anything else, you begin. Minutes 1 and 2, identity activation. 3 sentences. I am someone who. Today I will prove this by. The old version of me would, but I no longer operate that way. Minutes 3 through 5, decision scripting. 3 implementation intentions for your top 3 fork points. When I encounter X, I will do Y because I am Z. Visualize each one for 30 seconds. Minutes 6 and 7, environment lock. 3 questions about your physical, digital, and friction environment. 1 immediate action to adjust your space. That is it. 7 minutes. 3 phases. One intervention targeting all three layers of the reality shift trinity. You can do this in bed. You can do this in the shower. You can do this with children crying in the next room. It requires no special conditions. It requires no extended time blocks. It requires only your decision to do it. And here is what will happen if you run this protocol consistently for 14 days. Your fork-point defaults will begin to shift, not because you are fighting them, because you are reprogramming them. The decision scripts will start to feel automatic. The identity statements will start to feel true. The environment adjustments will compound. By day 30, the protocol will take less effort than skipping it. The new identity will feel more natural than the old one. And you will have proof, actual, visible proof, that your timeline has shifted. You now have the core system, the engine that drives the reality shift. But a protocol is only as strong as the decisions it programs. And most people fail at decision scripting because they write vague scripts for the wrong fork points. In the next chapter, I am going to give you a complete library of decision scripts, pre-built templates for the most common fork points that derail transformation. Morning resistance, afternoon energy dips, evening willpower collapse, social pressure, digital distraction, procrastination loops. You will not have to invent your scripts from scratch. You will select from a proven library, customize them to your specific fork points, and install them using the protocol you just learned. But more importantly, I am going to show you the hidden fork point that most people completely miss. The one that sabotages everything else. The one that happens before you even realize a decision is being made. Miss this fork point, and your other scripts will fail. Capture it, and your entire day changes. Your protocol is ready. Now let us arm it with the right ammunition. Chapter 5. Decision Scripts. Programming your fork points. 91% success versus 35%. The only difference was 16 words written before the moment arrived. That is not motivation. That is not discipline. That is the power of a decision script. The study I referenced in the last chapter from the British Journal of Health Psychology proved something that should fundamentally change how you approach behavior change. People who wrote specific if-then statements before encountering a challenge succeeded nearly 3 times more often than those who relied on motivation alone. Same people, same goals, same circumstances, different programming. Your fork points are not one in the moment. They are one before the moment exists. Synthesized decision script failures and conceptualized hidden fork point framework. Continuing with the first value explosion section, explaining why most people fail at decision scripts and introducing the concept of the hidden fork point. But here's where most people go wrong with decision scripts. They write vague scripts for obvious fork points and completely miss the hidden one that controls all the others. They script their alarm response but ignore the decision that happens 90 seconds earlier. They script their work focus but miss the fork point that already determined whether focus was possible. Today, I am going to give you 2 things. First, a library of proven decision scripts, templates you can customize for the most common fork points that derail transformation. You will not have to invent these from scratch. You will select, adapt, and install. Second, I am going to reveal the hidden fork point, the one that happens before you consciously recognize a decision is being made. The one that researchers at the Max Planck Institute discovered can predict your choices up to 7 seconds before you are aware you have made them. Miss this fork point, and your other scripts will fail. Your conscious intentions will be overridden by unconscious momentum. You will feel like you are trying hard, but somehow still losing. Capture this fork point, and everything changes. Your other scripts become dramatically more effective. Your willpower lasts longer. Your defaults shift faster. Let us start with the hidden fork point, because nothing else works until you understand this. The hidden fork point is called the awareness gap. Here's how it works. Before every conscious decision, there is a moment of pre-conscious processing. Your brain is already leaning toward a choice before you know a choice is being made. By the time you consciously recognize you are at a fork point, your subconscious has already cast its vote. The Max Planck Institute study used brain imaging to track this phenomenon. They found that neural activity predicting a decision appeared up to 7 seconds before participants reported being aware of their choice. 7 seconds. In brain time, that is an eternity. This means something profound. If you wait until you consciously notice a fork point to activate your decision script, you are already behind. Your subconscious has already pushed you toward the default. You are not choosing from neutral ground. You are trying to reverse momentum that has already built. The awareness gap is the space between when your brain starts processing a decision and when you become conscious of it. And that gap is where most transformation attempts die. So how do you close it? You install trigger scripts, decision scripts that activate not at the fork point itself, but at the environmental or emotional cue that precedes it. Here is the difference. A standard decision script says, when I feel the urge to check my phone during work, I will take 3 breaths and return to my task. A trigger script says, when I notice my attention starting to wander before I reach for anything, I will say focused lock and re-engage with my current task. The standard script activates at the fork point. The trigger script activates in the awareness gap, the moment before the fork point fully forms. This is not a minor adjustment. Research from the University of Sheffield found that cue-based interventions, scripts triggered by early warning signals rather than the decision moment itself, were 47% more effective than standard implementation intentions. You are not fighting the urge. You are intercepting it before it becomes an urge. Now let me give you the decision script library. These are templates. You will customize them with your specific fork points, your specific identity statements, and your specific environmental cues. But the structures are proven. They work. I am going to organize them by the 6 most common fork point categories that derail transformation. Category 1, morning resistance. This is the fork point between staying in bed and starting your day with intention. Template. When I hear my alarm, before my mind starts negotiating, I will say day 1 mentality and place my feet on the floor within 3 seconds, because I am someone who starts before I feel ready. The key here is before my mind starts negotiating. That is the awareness gap insertion. You are activating the script before the internal debate begins. Category 2, focus fracture. This is the fork point where deep work splinters into distraction. Template. When I notice my eyes drifting from my task or my hand moving toward my phone, I will say protect the hour and take 1 deep breath while returning my attention, because I am someone who finishes what I start. Notice the early cue, eyes drifting or hand moving. These are physical precursors to distraction. You are scripting the response to the precursor, not the distraction itself. Here is where average and elite performers diverge on decision scripts. Average performers write scripts for the moment of temptation. When I want to eat junk food, I will choose a healthy option. This sounds logical. It fails constantly, because by the time you want the junk food, the craving has momentum. Your subconscious has already voted. You are fighting an uphill battle with depleted resources. Elite performers write scripts for the precursor to temptation. When I notice I am eating for comfort rather than hunger, before I open the pantry, I will drink a glass of water and wait 3 minutes. The fork point is intercepted earlier. The craving never reaches full strength. This is why elite performers seem to have more self-control. They do not. They have earlier intervention points. They are scripting the awareness gap, while everyone else is scripting the moment of maximum resistance. Let me continue with the remaining categories. Category 3, afternoon collapse. This is the fork point where your energy dips and your defaults take over. Template. When I notice the post-lunch fog beginning, before I reach for caffeine or distraction, I will stand, take 10 deep breaths, and choose my single most important task for the next 90 minutes, because I am someone who protects my peak hours. The early cue is fog beginning, that first moment of mental cloudiness, not the full collapse. Category 4, evening drift. This is the fork point where your day's intentions dissolve into passive consumption. Template. When I finish dinner and feel the pull toward the couch, before I sit down, I will set out tomorrow's clothes and complete 1 5-minute preparation task, because I am someone who sets up tomorrow's wins today. Category 5, social pressure. This is the fork point where other people's expectations override your intentions. Template. When someone invites me to something that conflicts with my priorities, before I respond automatically, I will say, let me check my commitments and take 24 hours to decide, because I am someone who protects my focus and my word. The phrase, let me check my commitments, is a buffer script. It creates space. It prevents the automatic yes that derails so many transformation attempts. Category 6, procrastination loop. This is the fourth point where you delay starting despite knowing you should begin. Template. When I notice I am avoiding a task and generating reasons to delay, before I open a new browser tab, I will commit to working on it for exactly 2 minutes only, because I am someone who starts before conditions are perfect. The 2-minute commitment is based on research from the Behavioral Insights team showing that micro-commitments bypass the brain's resistance to large tasks. Once you start, continuing is easier than stopping. Here is another critical split. Average performers try to script every possible fork point. They create elaborate systems with dozens of if-then statements. Within days, they cannot remember their scripts. Within weeks, they have abandoned the system entirely. Complexity kills consistency. Elite performers script only their top 3 fork points. They know that trying to change everything changes nothing. They identify the 3 junctions with the highest leverage, the ones that, if won, create positive cascades through the rest of the day. They script those 3 with precision. They ignore the rest. A study from Duke University's Center for Advanced Hindsight found that people who focused on changing 1 to 3 behaviors succeeded at a rate of over 80%. People who tried to change more than 3 behaviors at once succeeded at a rate below 10%. More scripts do not mean more change. They mean more cognitive load, more failure points, and faster burnout. Your reality lock protocol programs 3 decision scripts each morning. Not because 3 is a magic number, because 3 is the maximum your working memory can hold while maintaining the quality and specificity that makes scripts effective. Win 3 fork points consistently, and you will transform. Try to win 10, and you will win none. Here is how your scripts evolve over the 30 days. Week 1, you run your 3 scripts consciously. They require effort. You have to remember them. You have to deliberately activate them. Some days you miss. That is normal. You are installing new code. Installation is not instant. Week 2, the scripts become semi-automatic. You still notice the fork points consciously, but the scripted response starts to feel more natural. The old default begins losing its grip. Week 3, a shift occurs. Research from University College London found that habit formation follows a nonlinear curve. There is a tipping point, usually between days 18 and 25, where the new behavior crosses from effortful to automatic. Your scripts are approaching this threshold. Week 4, the scripts run without conscious activation. You do not have to remember them. You do not have to fight for them. They have become your new default. The fork points that used to derail you now automatically route toward your desired reality. This is not theory. This is the documented trajectory of behavior change when proper implementation intentions are used. Your job is to stay consistent through weeks 1 and 2, the effortful phase, so you can reach weeks 3 and 4, where the rewards arrive. Let me give you the exact process for building your personal scripts. Step 1. Select your category. Which of the 6 fork point types causes you the most damage? Morning resistance? Focus fracture? Evening drift? Choose the one with the highest cost. Step 2. Identify your early cue. What happens just before the fork point fully forms? What is the physical sensation, environmental trigger, or emotional signal that precedes the decision? This is your awareness gap entry point. Step 3. Define your interruption phrase. A 2 to 4 word statement you will say internally when the cue appears. Focus lock. Day 1. Protect the hour. This phrase acts as a pattern interrupt, creating a micro-pause before the default activates. Step 4. Specify your physical response. What exact action will you take? Not a vague intention. A concrete, physical behavior. Feet on the floor. 3 breaths. Glass of water. Hands back on keyboard. Make it specific enough that you could verify it was done. Step 5. Anchor to identity. Complete the script with your identity statement. Because I am someone who. This ties the behavior back to who you are becoming, reinforcing the identity code you activated in phase 1 of your morning protocol. Write it out. Speak it out loud. Visualize it. Then, tomorrow morning, install it using your reality lock protocol. You now have the scripts. You know how to write them. You know where to insert them. You know the hidden fork point that makes them work. But there is still one force that can override everything you have built: your environment. You can have perfect identity activation. You can have precision decision scripts. You can capture every awareness gap and still fail because your physical and digital surroundings are engineered against you. In the next chapter, we are going to rebuild your environment from the ground up. Not a complete life overhaul. Strategic interventions in the specific spaces where your fork points occur. I am going to show you the 3 environment layers that determine whether your scripts succeed or fail. The invisible architecture that most people never examine. And the 1-hour environment audit that will remove more friction from your transformation than months of willpower ever could. Your scripts are loaded. Your protocol is running. Now let us build the world that makes them inevitable. Chapter 6. Environment Architecture. Lock your new timeline. You do not control 90% of your daily decisions. Your environment does, and right now it is voting against you. This is not an exaggeration. A landmark study from the University of Southern California found that 90% of daily behaviors are triggered by environmental cues, not conscious choices. The chair you sit in, the apps on your home screen, the food visible on your counter, the people you see first each morning. These are not neutral elements of your surroundings. They are voting machines, each one casting ballots for which version of you shows up today. And unless you have deliberately designed them, they are all voting for your old identity. Here is what most people miss about environment design. They think it means decluttering, organizing, making things look nicer. That is decoration, not architecture. True environment architecture is strategic. It is understanding exactly which environmental elements trigger which behaviors, and then engineering those elements to trigger the behaviors you want instead of the ones you have been stuck with. Your environment has 3 layers. Each layer influences your fork points differently. Each layer requires a different intervention strategy. And most transformation attempts fail because they address only one layer while ignoring the other 2. Layer 1 is your physical environment, the tangible space around you, your bedroom, your workspace, your kitchen, the objects within arm's reach. This is the layer most people think of when they hear environment design. Layer 2 is your digital environment, your phone, your computer, your apps, notifications, and browser tabs. This layer is invisible but omnipresent. For most people, it is the most influential environment they inhabit and the least intentionally designed. Layer 3 is your social environment, the people you interact with regularly, their expectations, their behaviors, their influence on your sense of what is normal and possible. This layer is the hardest to change, but often the most powerful. Today, we are going to audit all 3. And by the end of this chapter, you will know exactly which environmental elements are sabotaging your fork points and how to redesign them. Let me show you how environmental triggers actually work in your brain. When you encounter an environmental cue, your basal ganglia, the part of your brain that stores habitual responses, activates before your prefrontal cortex even knows what is happening. The cue triggers an automatic behavior without conscious deliberation. This is why you can find yourself scrolling social media without remembering the decision to pick up your phone. The phone was visible. The cue was processed. The behavior was triggered. By the time your conscious mind caught up, you were already 3 minutes deep. Dr. Wendy Wood at the University of Southern California has spent decades studying this mechanism. Her research concludes that the most effective way to change behavior is not to strengthen willpower, but to restructure cues. Remove the cue, and the automatic behavior has nothing to trigger it. Replace the cue, and a new automatic behavior can form. This is environment architecture. You are not building motivation. You are restructuring triggers. Here is the principle that governs everything we will do in this chapter. Make the desired behavior the path of least resistance, and make the undesired behavior require extra effort. Friction is your tool. Reduce friction for what you want. Increase friction for what you do not. A study published in the Journal of Consumer Psychology found that simply increasing the number of steps required to access a temptation, even by 1 or 2 steps, reduced the frequency of that behavior by over 50%. The behavior was not eliminated. The desire was not removed. But the extra friction was enough to interrupt the automatic trigger sequence. You do not need ironclad willpower. You need strategic inconvenience. Now let us audit your physical environment. I want you to think about the 3 locations where you spend the most time each day. For most people, this is the bedroom, the workspace, and the kitchen or living area. These are your primary behavioral arenas. Most of your 4 points occur in one of these 3 spaces. For each space, answer these 3 questions. Question 1. What is visible within arm's reach? The objects you can see and touch without moving trigger automatic behaviors. Your phone on your nightstand triggers checking before you rise. Snacks on the counter trigger eating without hunger. A cluttered desk triggers avoidance before you start. Visibility equals trigger probability. Question 2. What is the default position of this space? When you enter the room, what does the environment suggest you do? A couch facing a television suggests sitting and watching. A desk with an open laptop suggests working. A kitchen with prep materials out suggests cooking. The default position shapes the default behavior. Question 3. What friction exists between me and my desired behavior in this space? How many steps does it take to start the behavior you want? If working out requires finding clothes, locating equipment, and clearing space, that is 3 friction points. Each one increases the likelihood of default behavior instead. Write down your answers for each of your 3 spaces. Be honest. You are not evaluating your character. You are diagnosing your architecture. Here is the split. Average performers try to resist their environment. They keep the phone on the nightstand and try not to check it. They keep snacks in the cabinet and try not to eat them. They work with social media tabs open and try not to click. Every day is a battle against triggers they could have simply removed. Elite performers redesign their environment so resistance becomes unnecessary. The phone charges in another room. The snacks do not enter the house. The browser has blocking software installed. The triggers are gone before the day begins. This is not about being extreme. This is about being strategic. Elite performers understand that every trigger you leave in place is a decision you will have to make and win. And you only have so many wins available each day. James Clear popularized a concept called environment design in his work on habits. He documented case after case of people who transformed their behavior not by increasing discipline, but by decreasing environmental friction for good behaviors and increasing it for bad ones. One client moved his guitar from the closet to a stand in the living room. He went from practicing once a month to practicing daily. The guitar was now visible. The trigger was constant. The behavior became automatic. Another client started keeping a book on her pillow every morning. When she went to bed, the book was there before her phone. She went from scrolling for an hour before sleep to reading for an hour instead. Same desire to unwind. Different environmental trigger. No willpower required. Just architecture. Here is your physical environment intervention. Choose one fork point that occurs in a physical space. Maybe it is the morning alarm fork point in your bedroom. Maybe it is the afternoon distraction fork point at your desk. Maybe it is the evening consumption fork point in your living room. Now implement what I call the one-touch redesign. Make one physical change that reduces friction for your desired behavior or increases friction for your undesired behavior. Examples: move your phone charger to another room and place a book or journal on your nightstand instead. Put your workout clothes on top of your dresser so they are the first thing you see. Place a full water bottle on your desk where your snacks used to be. Turn your television to face the wall and position a reading chair where the view used to be. One touch, one change, one intervention. Research from the Behavior Design Lab at Stanford found that single environmental changes had a higher success rate than complex redesigns. People who made one strategic adjustment maintained that change 89% of the time after 30 days. People who attempted comprehensive overhauls maintained their changes only 23% of the time. Simple scales. Complex collapses. Make your one touch today. Now let us address the layer most people ignore: your digital environment. Consider this. The average American spends over 7 hours per day interacting with digital devices according to data from eMarketer. 7 hours. nearly half of all waking time. And for most people, that digital environment was not designed by them. It was designed by companies whose business model depends on capturing and holding your attention. Your phone's home screen was not arranged for your productivity. It was arranged for maximum engagement. Your notification settings were not calibrated for your focus. They were calibrated to pull you back into apps. Your social media feeds were not curated for your well-being. They were optimized for time spent scrolling. You are living in an environment engineered by some of the smartest behavioral designers in the world, and their goals are not your goals. The audit for your digital environment requires answering 3 different questions. Question 1. What is on my phone's home screen and first swipe? These are your highest triggered digital cues. Whatever lives there gets opened most frequently. Is it serving your identity or sabotaging it? Question 2. What notifications are enabled, and how often do they interrupt me? Each notification is a trigger that pulls you from whatever you were doing into whatever the app wants you to do. Most people have dozens of apps with notifications enabled. Each one is a 4-point you did not choose. Question 3. What is my default digital behavior during transition moments? When you finish a task, when you wait for something, when you feel bored, what app do you open automatically? This is your digital default, and it is almost certainly draining time and focus you did not mean to spend. The split here is dramatic. Average performers accept their digital environment as it came. They use default settings. They allow all notifications. They keep high distraction apps on their home screen because that is where the apps place themselves. They are passengers in a vehicle being driven by algorithms. Elite performers treat their digital environment as hostile territory until proven otherwise. They audit every app. They disable notifications by default, enabling only the essential few. They move social media and entertainment apps off the home screen entirely, or delete them from the phone and access them only through browsers with extra friction. A study from the University of Texas at Austin found that merely having your smartphone visible on your desk reduced cognitive capacity by up to 10%, even when the phone was turned off. The phone did not ring. No notification appeared, but its presence alone was enough to fragment attention. The researchers called this brain drain. Your phone does not have to interrupt you to diminish you. It just has to be there. Elite performers understand this. They put the phone in a drawer, in another room, in a timed lockbox during deep work hours. They remove the trigger entirely rather than fighting its pull. The final layer is the most complex, your social environment. Jim Rohn famously said you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Research from Harvard Medical School confirmed this is not just motivational rhetoric. Their longitudinal study tracking over 12,000 people found that behaviors spread through social networks like contagions. If your close friend becomes obese, your risk of obesity increases by 57%. If your friend's friend becomes obese, your risk still increases by 20%. Behaviors are socially contagious. Standards are socially contagious. Beliefs about what is possible are socially contagious. This means your social environment is not neutral. The people around you are constantly calibrating your sense of normal. If everyone around you checks their phone constantly, constant checking becomes normal. If everyone around you complains about being stuck becomes normal. If everyone around you settles for average becomes the ceiling you cannot see past. You cannot always change who is in your life, but you can change 3 things. First, you can change the ratio. Increase time with people who embody where you want to go. Decrease time with people who embody where you have been. You do not have to end relationships. You adjust allocation. Second, you can change the input. If you cannot physically access people at the level you aspire to, access them digitally. Podcasts, audiobooks, interviews, online communities. Your brain does not fully distinguish between physical and digital social exposure. Use this. Third, you can change what you share. The version of yourself you present to others shapes the version you become. If you talk about your goals, your standards rise. If you announce your commitments, your follow-through increases. Social accountability is environment designed for identity. You now understand the 3 layers: physical, digital, social. You know how each one triggers behaviors. You know how to audit them. You know how to intervene. But here is what happens next. In Chapter 7, we begin the 30-day execution. The first 72 hours are critical. Research shows that the initial momentum you build in days 1 through 3 predicts your success rate for the entire month. I am going to give you the exact sequence for your first 72 hours. What to do on day 1 when motivation is high. What to expect on day 2 when resistance appears. How to handle day 3 when your old identity makes its first serious attempt to pull you back. This is where most people fail. Not at day 21. Not at day 14. At day 3. The 72-hour window is where timelines split permanently. You have the protocol. You have the scripts. You have the environment. Now it is time to execute. Your first 72 hours start the moment you finish this chapter. Chapter 7. The first 72 hours. Reality momentum. 83% of transformation attempts die within 72 hours, and it has nothing to do with motivation. That statistic comes from research at the University College London, and it should terrify you. Not because failure is likely, because failure is predictable. The first 3 days follow a pattern so consistent that researchers can map it hour by hour. Day 1 feels electric. Day 2 feels heavy. Day 3 feels impossible. Most people interpret this progression as evidence that change is not for them. It is not. It is neuroscience. It is your old identity fighting for survival. And if you know the pattern, you can beat it. Here is what is actually happening in your brain during those 72 hours. When you begin a new behavior pattern, your prefrontal cortex, the conscious, decision-making part, is fully engaged. This is why day 1 feels good. You are paying attention. You are deliberate. You are actively choosing your new identity. The novelty creates dopamine. The intention creates focus. Everything feels possible, but your prefrontal cortex is expensive. It consumes enormous amounts of glucose and oxygen. It cannot sustain that level of engagement indefinitely. By day 2, it starts to fatigue. The novelty dopamine fades. The effort becomes apparent. What felt like an exciting choice now feels like work. Then day 3 arrives. Your basal ganglia, the part of your brain that runs automatic behaviors, stages a coup. It has been running your old patterns for years, maybe decades. It does not want to be overwritten, so it floods you with resistance, with discomfort, with 1,000 reasons why the old way was fine, why this new approach is too hard, why you should just take a break and start again next week. This is not weakness. This is biology. Your brain is trying to protect you from change because change, to your survival systems, registers as threat. The people who transform are not the ones who feel less resistance on day 3. They are the ones who expected the resistance and built a strategy to move through it. That is what this chapter gives you. Let us map each day with precision. Day 1 is about activation energy. In chemistry, activation energy is the minimum energy required to start a reaction. On day 1, you have that energy. Motivation is high. Intention is clear. The decision to change is fresh. Your job on day 1 is not to conserve this energy. It is to deploy it strategically. Here is your day 1 protocol. First, run your 7-minute reality lock within 30 minutes of waking. Identity activation. Decision scripts. Environment lock. Do not skip any phase. Do not abbreviate. This is your foundation. Second, win your first fork point deliberately and loudly. When your first scripted fork point arrives, execute the script with full conscious attention. Notice yourself doing it. Acknowledge that you did it. This is not about the behavior itself. It is about evidence. You are proving to your brain that the new identity is real. Third, complete one environment intervention you have been postponing. Move the phone charger. Delete the app. Rearrange the workspace. One physical change that makes tomorrow easier than today. Activation energy depletes. Use it while you have it. Fourth, before bed, run what I call the evidence lock. Answer one question in your mind or out loud. What did I do today that proves I am becoming who I intend to be? Name specific actions. Your brain is constantly collecting evidence about who you are. Feed it evidence that supports your new identity. Day 1 is not about perfection. It is about momentum. Research from the Dominican University of California found that people who took action on their goals within 24 hours of setting them were 300% more likely to achieve them than those who delayed. Day 1 action is not optional. It is predictive. Day 2 is where the real work begins. I call Day 2 the gravity day. The initial lift has faded. The weight of your old patterns starts pulling you back toward Earth. Everything requires more effort than it did yesterday. Your decision scripts feel less automatic. Your motivation feels thinner. This is normal. This is expected. This is not a sign that something is wrong. Here is your Day 2 protocol. First, run your reality lock protocol even if you do not feel like it. Especially if you do not feel like it. Day 2 is where you prove that your transformation is not dependent on feeling ready. You do the protocol because it is who you are now, not because you are inspired. Second, lower your standards for everything except showing up. Day 2 is not the day to optimize. It is not the day to do more than required. It is the day to simply maintain the system. If your decision script says work out for 30 minutes and 30 feels impossible, do 10. But do 10. The behavior matters more than the duration. Consistency beats intensity on Day 2. Third, expect the negotiation voice. This is the internal dialogue that offers you reasonable sounding exits. You did well yesterday, you can take today off. One day won't matter. You're too tired to do this properly. Better to wait until you can do it right. Recognize this voice for what it is, your old identity making its case. Hear it, acknowledge it, then run your script anyway. Fourth, connect with your future self. Take 60 seconds before bed to visualize yourself on Day 30. See the person who maintained the system for a full month. Feel what that person feels. This is not fantasy. This is neurological bridging. Research from UCLA's psychology department found that future self-visualization increases follow-through by strengthening the neural connection between present actions and future outcomes. Day 2 is uncomfortable by design. The discomfort is not a bug. It is the feeling of new neural pathways being carved. Here is where timelines split. Average performers interpret Day 2 discomfort as a signal to stop. They think, if this were right for me, it wouldn't feel so hard. They use emotional state as evidence of fit. If it feels bad, it must be bad. So they pull back. They take a break. They tell themselves they will restart when conditions improve. Elite performers interpret Day 2 discomfort as confirmation they are on track. They think, this is exactly what the research predicted. My old identity is resisting. That means I'm actually threatening it. They use emotional discomfort as evidence of progress. The harder it feels, the more it matters. A study from the University of Pennsylvania's Positive Psychology Center examined people who successfully completed difficult challenges, marathons, degree programs, business launches. The single strongest predictor of completion was not talent, resources, or support. It was the interpretation of difficulty. Those who viewed difficulty as meaningful persisted. Those who viewed difficulty as a warning quit. The difficulty is identical. The interpretation determines the outcome. Day 3 is the decisive moment. I call it the identity crossroads. This is the day your old self makes its strongest bid to reclaim control. The resistance peaks. The excuses feel most valid. The temptation to quit feels most rational. If you lose Day 3, you are statistically unlikely to continue. The pattern restarts. The loop closes. You return to default. If you win Day 3, everything changes. Research from the European Journal of Social Psychology found that participants who maintained a new behavior through Day 3 were over 60% more likely to reach the automaticity threshold later in the month. Day 3 is the gatekeeper. Here is your Day 3 protocol. First, anticipate the ambush. Before Day 3 even arrives, ideally during your Day 2 evening reflection, tell yourself explicitly, tomorrow my old identity will fight hard. I expect this. I am ready. This preemptive acknowledgement reduces the power of the resistance when it comes. You are not surprised by it. You predicted it. Second, deploy your emergency script. This is a special decision script specifically for Day 3. It runs when you feel the strongest urge to quit. Here is the template. When I feel like stopping entirely, I will do the smallest possible version of my commitment and nothing more, because I am someone who never breaks the chain. The smallest possible version might be one push-up instead of a workout, one sentence instead of a writing session, 1 minute of focus instead of an hour. You are not aiming for quality. You are aiming for continuity. The chain must not break. Third, use social accountability. Tell one person, a friend, partner, or colleague what you committed to and that today is day 3. You do not need them to monitor you. You just need to have spoken it out loud. Research from the American Society of Training and Development found that committing to someone else increases your probability of success from 65% to 95%. Fourth, reward the win. When you complete day 3, even imperfectly, acknowledge it. Say out loud or internally, I made it through the crossroads. My old identity fought, and I won. This is not self-congratulation. This is evidence logging. You are cementing the victory into your identity narrative. One more critical distinction. Average performers treat days 1 through 3 as a test period. They are trying the new identity to see if it fits. They are evaluating whether this changes for them. They hold the old identity in reserve, ready to return if the experiment fails. Elite performers treat days 1 through 3 as an installation period. They are not testing the new identity. They are installing it. There is no fallback position. There is no old identity waiting in the wings. The decision was made before day 1 began. Days 1 through 3 are simply the execution of a decision already finalized. This distinction sounds subtle. It changes everything. When you are testing, every difficulty becomes evidence that the test might fail. When you are installing, difficulty is just part of the installation process. You do not abandon an installation because it requires effort. You complete it because you already decided to. Dr. Carol Dweck's research at Stanford on mindset applies directly here. People with a testing mindset interpret obstacles as judgments. People with an installation mindset interpret obstacles as steps. Same obstacles, different frames, different outcomes. Here is what you have built by the end of hour 72. You have run the reality lock protocol 3 times. Your identity statements are beginning to feel familiar instead of aspirational. The phrases are becoming grooves in your thinking. You have executed decision scripts at multiple fork points. Some worked smoothly. Some required conscious override. But each execution strengthened the neural pathway between cue and response. You have made at least one environment intervention. The physical or digital trigger that used to work against you has been altered. The friction has shifted. You have survived the day 3 crossroads. Your old identity made its case, and you did not comply. This is not a small thing. This is your brain registering that the new identity has survival power. And here is the compounding effect most people miss. Each successful day makes the next day slightly easier. Not dramatically easier. Slightly. The neural pathway is marginally stronger. The identity is marginally more stable. The default is marginally closer to shifting. This is why 72 hours matters so much. You are not just completing 3 days. You are building 3 layers of compound evidence that this new reality is real. You have survived the most dangerous window, but the transformation is not complete. Days 4 through 14 bring a different challenge. Not the acute resistance of days 1 through 3. Something more subtle, more insidious. I call it the resistance dip. This is the period when the initial excitement has faded, the day 3 victory feels distant, and the finish line is not yet visible. You are in the middle. The middle is where most transformations go to die quietly. In the next chapter, I am going to show you exactly what happens in your brain during days 4 through 14. Why the resistance changes form. Why motivation becomes unreliable. And the 3 specific interventions that carry you through the dip to the other side. You have proven you can start. Now let us prove you can continue. Chapter 8. Days 4 to 14. The resistance dip. The most dangerous part of transformation is not the beginning. It is the middle, where 92% of people quietly quit without even noticing they have stopped. Days 4 through 14 are the graveyard of good intentions. Research from the University of Hertfordshire found that this window, after the initial excitement fades, but before the new behavior becomes automatic, has the highest dropout rate of any phase in behavior change. And here is what makes it lethal. People do not dramatically quit during this period. They gradually fade. They miss one day, then two. Then the system dissolves, and they barely remember they were trying to change it all. The resistance dip is different from the first 72 hours. In days 1 through 3, the resistance was loud. It was obvious. It felt like a battle. Your old identity made its case aggressively, and you could recognize the fight happening. Days 4 through 14 are quieter, more subtle. The resistance changes tactics. Instead of screaming at you to stop, it whispers that you can slow down. Instead of demanding you quit, it suggests you have already done enough. Instead of confronting you directly, it simply makes you forget. This is what makes the dip so dangerous. It does not feel like failure. It feels like normal life reasserting itself. The urgency fades. The protocol feels less essential. The decision scripts seem less necessary now that you have proven you can do them. And then one morning you wake up and realize you have not run the reality lock in 4 days. You have not executed your scripts in a week. The environment interventions have reversed. And somehow, without a clear decision to stop, you stopped. This is not a willpower failure. This is a visibility failure. The threat became invisible, so you stopped defending against it. Today I am going to make the threat visible again. And I am going to give you 3 specific interventions that carry you through the dip to the other side. Let me explain what is happening in your brain during days 4 through 14. When you started this process, your brain released elevated dopamine in response to the novelty of your new behavior. Dopamine is not just a pleasure chemical. It is an attention chemical. It flags experiences as important. It tells your brain to pay attention and remember. By day 4, the novelty has worn off. Your brain no longer sees the new behavior as novel. Dopamine levels normalize. And without that chemical spotlight, your new patterns fade into the background of your awareness. Simultaneously, your old neural pathways are still intact. They have not been erased. They are just dormant. And dormant pathways are patient. They wait. They know that if the new behavior loses attention and reinforcement for long enough, they can reactivate. Dr. Elliot Berkman at the University of Oregon calls this the goal neglect phase. Your goal has not been abandoned. It has been neglected. You still want the outcome. You still believe in the transformation. But without active reinforcement, the goal slips from working memory into background storage. Meanwhile, your default behaviors require no attention. They run automatically. They do not need novelty or motivation or conscious focus. They just execute. This is the asymmetry of the dip. Your new identity requires effort to maintain visibility. Your old identity maintains itself for free. Unless you intervene, the path of least resistance always wins. Here is intervention number 1, the daily proof requirement. During days 4 through 14, you must generate proof of your new identity every single day. Not optional. Not when you feel like it. Every day. The proof does not have to be large. It does not have to be impressive. It has to be undeniable. Here's how it works. At the end of each day, you answer one question. What is one thing I did today that my old identity would not have done? Then you name it. Specifically, out loud or in writing. Today I woke up before my alarm and started the reality lock protocol immediately. My old identity would have hit snooze. Today I felt the pull towards social media at 2 p.m. and I ran my decision script instead. My old identity would have scrolled for 30 minutes. Today I prepared tomorrow's priorities before watching television. My old identity would have collapsed on the couch first. The behavior can be small. The acknowledgement makes it significant. Research from Princeton University's psychology department found that daily self-reflection on goal-aligned behaviors increased persistence by over 40%. But here is the key finding. The reflection had to be specific. Vague reflection, I did okay today, had no effect. Specific reflection, naming exact behaviors that aligned with goals, changed everything. Your brain is constantly asking, who am I? Every time you provide specific proof of your new identity, you answer that question in your favor. Here is where the split occurs. Average performers rely on feeling like their new identity to maintain it. When the novelty fades and the emotions normalize, they interpret the absence of excitement as the absence of progress. They think, I don't feel different. so maybe I'm not changing. Without emotional feedback, they lose faith. Without faith, they lose effort. Without effort, they fade. Elite performers generate evidence of their new identity independent of emotion. They do not need to feel transformed to act transformed. They understand that identity is not a feeling. Identity is an accumulation of proof. So they collect proof daily, regardless of how they feel, knowing that the feelings will eventually catch up to the evidence. A longitudinal study from the University of British Columbia tracked people through extended behavior change programs. The researchers found that participants' emotional experience of the change was not correlated with success. Some successful changers felt excited throughout. Others felt neutral or even negative. What predicted success was not how they felt, but whether they continued generating evidence through action. Feelings follow behavior. Behavior does not follow feelings. During the dip, this principle is survival. Intervention number 2, the minimum viable commitment. During days 4 through 14, your ambitious version of the protocol is the enemy. This sounds counterintuitive. It is essential. Here's why. When motivation is high, high standards feel achievable. When motivation normalizes, which it will during the dip, high standards become friction. They give you an excuse to skip entirely. I don't have time for the full workout, so I'll do it tomorrow. I can't focus for 2 hours, so why start at all? Perfectionism becomes procrastination in disguise. The minimum viable commitment strips away that excuse. During the dip, you define the smallest version of each commitment that still counts. The version so small that you cannot reasonably claim you lack the time, energy, or conditions to complete it. Your 30-minute workout becomes 5 minutes. Your hour of deep work becomes 15 minutes. Your full reality lock protocol becomes identity activation only, just the 3 sentences. The minimum viable version maintains the chain without the resistance. Dr. B.J. Fogg at Stanford's Behavior Design Lab built an entire methodology around this concept. His research shows that tiny habits outperform ambitious habits during periods of low motivation precisely because they remove the psychological barrier to starting. Once you start, continuing is easier. But the start is where most people fail during the dip. Here is the rule. During days 4 through 14, your only job is to not break the chain. Quality can wait. Duration can wait. Consistency cannot wait. 1 push-up counts. 1 sentence counts. 1 minute counts. 0 does not count. Another critical divergence. Average performers see minimum effort as cheating. They think, if I'm not doing it fully, I'm not really doing it. So when they cannot perform at their peak standard, they skip entirely. They would rather have a 0 than a compromise. And those zeros accumulate into collapse. Elite performers see minimum effort as strategic. They understand that the chain is more valuable than any single link. A weak link maintains continuity. A missing link breaks everything. So they will do the minimum, proudly, intentionally, knowing that keeping the chain intact is the priority. James Clear documented this pattern extensively. He found that successful habit builders almost universally had a never miss twice rule. Missing once is human. Missing twice is the beginning of a new pattern. During the dip, the minimum viable commitment is your never miss once strategy. It makes missing unnecessary. The person who does 5 push-ups every day for a month builds more strength and more identity than the person who does 30 push-ups for a week and quits. Consistency compounds. Intensity without consistency does not. Intervention number 3, the progress anchor. The dip feels endless because you cannot see how far you have come. Without visible progress, your brain concludes that nothing is working. And if nothing is working, why continue? The progress anchor makes your progress visible. Here's the method. Before day 4 begins, establish a simple tracking system. This can be as basic as a calendar where you mark each day you execute the protocol. It can be a notes file where you log your daily proof each evening. It can be a habit tracking app if you prefer digital systems. The format does not matter. The visibility matters. Research from the Dominican University of California found that people who kept written records of their progress were 42% more likely to achieve their goals than those who did not. The act of recording creates evidence. The evidence creates momentum. The momentum carries you through the dip. But here is the critical addition for days 4 through 14. Every third day, review your entire record from day 1. Do not just log today's proof. Look back at the full chain. See day 1. See day 3. See the crossroads you survived. See every minimum viable commitment you maintained. See the proof accumulating. This review takes 90 seconds. Its impact is disproportionate. Your brain needs to see the trajectory. During the dip, when each day feels isolated and insignificant, the trajectory reminds you that you are building something, that the chain is real, that your new identity has a body of evidence supporting it. You are not just surviving the dip. You are documenting your survival. And that documentation becomes the foundation for everything that comes after. You have the 3 interventions: daily proof requirement, minimum viable commitment, progress anchor. These are your tools for navigating the middle. But here is what awaits you on the other side. Days 15 through 30 are where the transformation locks in, where the neural pathways finally consolidate, where your decision scripts begin executing without conscious activation, where the new identity stops feeling like a performance and starts feeling like the truth. In the next chapter, I am going to show you exactly what happens in your brain during the lock-in phase. Why some people reach day 15 and accelerate while others plateau and fade. And the specific protocols that ensure you cross the threshold from trying to change to changed. You have survived the beginning. You are navigating the middle. Now let us make sure you reach the end that actually sticks. Chapter 9, Days 15 to 30, Identity Lock-in. On day 18, something happens in your brain that cannot be reversed, and most people never notice the moment their new life became permanent. Neuroscientists call it the automaticity threshold. It is the point where a behavior stops requiring conscious effort and starts running on its own. Research from University College London pinpointed this threshold at an average of 66 days. But here is what their data also revealed. The steepest acceleration in automaticity occurs between days 18 and 25. This is when the neural pathway crosses from fragile to stable. Miss this window, and you plateau. Capture it, and your new identity locks in permanently. You have survived the first 72 hours. You have navigated the resistance dip. You are now entering the most powerful phase of the entire 30-day process. Days 15 through 30 are not about endurance anymore. They are about acceleration. Here is what is different now. In the early days, every execution of your protocol required willpower. Every decision script needed conscious activation. Every 4-point felt like a choice you had to win deliberately. That is starting to change. By day 15, something subtle has shifted. The protocol feels less like an intervention and more like a routine. The decision scripts are beginning to fire semi-automatically. You still notice the 4 points, but the correct response is starting to feel like the natural response. This is not imagination. This is myelination. Myelin is a fatty sheath that wraps around neural pathways when they are repeatedly activated. Each time you run a behavior, the pathway gets slightly more insulated. More insulation means faster signal transmission. Faster transmission means less conscious effort required. The behavior becomes smoother, quicker, more automatic. Dr. George Bartsokis at UCLA spent years studying myelination and skill acquisition. His research demonstrated that heavily myelinated pathways can transmit signals up to 100 times faster than unmyelinated ones. This is why experts make their craft look effortless. Their pathways are so well insulated that the behaviors run without friction. You are building that insulation right now. Every day you maintain the system, the myelin thickens. Every decision script you execute adds another layer. By day 30, pathways that required struggle on day 1 will fire with minimal resistance. But only if you do not make the mistake that derails most people in this phase. The mistake is called premature optimization. Here is how it happens. Around day 15, you start feeling competent. The system is working. The resistance has faded. You have proof that you can maintain this. And your brain, always seeking efficiency, starts asking a dangerous question. How can I do this faster? Better? With less effort? This sounds productive. It is a trap. When you start optimizing a behavior that has not yet reached full automaticity, you disrupt the myelination process. You change the pathway before it has stabilized. You introduce variability into a system that needs consistency to lock in. Research from the University of California, Santa Barbara examined skill acquisition across multiple domains. They found that learners who modified their approach during the consolidation phase, days 15 through 30 in most cases, took significantly longer to reach automaticity than those who maintained consistent execution throughout. The principle is counterintuitive but critical. During the lock-in phase, boring consistency beats creative improvement. Do not upgrade your morning protocol. Do not add complexity to your decision scripts. Do not redesign your environment interventions. Run the same system you have been running. Let the pathway stabilize. Let the myelin build. There will be time for optimization after day 30. Right now, your only job is repetition. Same protocol, same scripts, same interventions, same boring consistency that transforms fragile pathways into permanent infrastructure. Now let me show you what changes during this phase. Around day 18 to 22, you will notice something peculiar. Your decision scripts will start firing before you consciously recognize the fork point. You will find yourself executing the correct behavior and then realize, a moment later, that you made a choice. This is the inversion point, the moment where conscious decision becomes unconscious response. Before this point, the sequence was notice fork point, remember script, consciously execute. After this point, the sequence becomes execute, then notice you executed. This feels strange the first time it happens. You might even doubt yourself. Did I really do that automatically? Am I imagining this? You are not imagining it. This is automaticity emerging. This is your new identity taking over operation of behaviors that used to require constant supervision. When you notice this happening, do not analyze it. Do not question it. And critically, do not try to take back conscious control. Let the automatic response run. Your job is shifting from operator to observer. The system you built is starting to operate itself. Here is where paths diverge in the lock-in phase. Average performers get uncomfortable with automaticity. They feel like they are losing control. They mistake unconscious competence for carelessness. So they reassert conscious oversight. They start thinking about the scripts again, analyzing each fork point, re-engaging the deliberate machinery they worked so hard to transcend. This is like teaching someone to drive, watching them finally stop thinking about each individual action and then demanding they narrate every movement again. You are regressing them back to conscious incompetence. Elite performers welcome automaticity. They recognize it as the goal, not a side effect. They understand that the entire point of this 30-day process was to build behaviors that run without conscious effort. When they notice automatic execution happening, they celebrate internally and stay out of the way. Dr. Anders Ericsson, whose research on expertise informed the 10,000 hours concept, documented this pattern extensively. He found that the transition from conscious to unconscious execution was the critical marker of skill integration. Experts were not people who thought harder about their craft. They were people whose craft had become so automated that their conscious mind was freed for higher-order challenges. Your new identity is becoming automatic. Let it. Here is what happens when multiple behaviors lock in simultaneously. Each behavior you have been building, the reality lock protocol, your decision scripts, your environment interventions, is developing its own neural pathway. By day 20, these pathways start interacting. They reinforce each other. They create what neuroscientists call a habit cluster. A habit cluster is more stable than any individual habit. When one behavior in the cluster activates, it triggers the others. Your morning identity activation primes your decision scripts. Your decision scripts reinforce your environment interventions. Your environment interventions support tomorrow's identity activation. The system becomes self-sustaining. Research from Duke University's Center for Cognitive Neuroscience examined habit clusters in long-term behavior change. They found that people who built interconnected habit systems were over 4 times more likely to maintain their changes after 6 months compared to people who built isolated habits. This is why the reality shift trinity, identity, decisions, environment, was designed as an integrated system. You were not just building three separate habits. You were building a cluster. And that cluster is now approaching the density required to sustain itself without constant conscious input. By day 25, maintaining your system will require less effort than abandoning it. The cluster will have its own momentum. Your defaults will have shifted. The old patterns that used to run automatically will now require effort to reactivate. This is the flip. The moment where staying changed becomes easier than going back. One more critical distinction for this phase. Average performers view day 30 as a finish line. They think, once I complete 30 days, I am done. I have changed. I can relax now. They treat the transformation like a project with an end date, and projects that end revert to pre-project conditions. Elite performers view day 30 as a transition point. They think, day 30 is when the installation completes. Now the system runs in maintenance mode. They understand that identity is not a destination. It is an operating system that requires ongoing execution, but execution that now happens automatically. The difference is not semantic. It determines whether your transformation persists. A meta-analysis published in the Journal of Behavioral Medicine examined over 100 behavior change studies. The researchers found that participants who framed their goal as becoming someone who does X maintained changes at 3 times the rate of participants who framed their goal as doing X for Y days. Identity framing outlasts goal framing. People who built identity maintained behavior. People who completed goals regressed to baseline. You are not completing 30 days. You are installing a permanent operating system. Day 30 is not when you finish. It is when the installation confirms successful and the system goes live. Here is your protocol for the lock-in phase. During days 15 through 30, you are going to build what I call the identity evidence vault. This is a collection of undeniable proof that your new identity is real. Every 3 days, you will record one piece of evidence that could only exist if your transformation were genuine. Not intentions, not feelings. Observable proof. Day 15. Record one behavior you executed this week that you would not have executed 30 days ago. Day 18. Record one situation you handled differently than your old identity would have. Day 21. Record one choice you made automatically that used to require conscious effort. Day 24. Record one external result, however small, that your new behaviors have produced. Day 27. Record one moment when you realized your self-image has shifted. Day 30. Record your answer to this question. Who am I now that I was not before? This vault serves 2 purposes. First, it makes your transformation undeniable to yourself. When doubt arises in the future, and it will, you will have documented evidence to reference. Second, it accelerates identity consolidation. Research from Northwestern University found that narrative self-reflection, the act of story building around personal change, significantly strengthened identity shifts. You are not just changing, you are documenting your change. And documentation makes change durable. By day 30, your reality shift will be structurally complete. But a question remains. What happens after? How do you maintain a transformation without maintaining constant vigilance? How do you live in your new timeline without the scaffolding of a 30-day program? In the final chapter, I am going to show you exactly what life looks like on the other side. The maintenance protocol that keeps your new identity stable with minimal effort. The warning signs that indicate drift back toward old patterns. And the single most important principle for ensuring that the next 30 days become the next 30 years. You have built something real. You have rewired pathways that have been running for decades. You have installed a new operating system on hardware that resisted every upgrade attempt before this one. Now let us make sure it never needs to be installed again. Chapter 10. Your parallel self, living in the new timeline. You are no longer becoming someone new. You already are. And the proof is that you cannot remember exactly when the shift happened. This is the strangest part of identity transformation. It does not announce itself. There is no ceremony. No clear moment where the old you exits and the new you enters. One day you simply notice that your defaults have changed, that the behaviors which once required struggle now require effort to avoid, That the person you were 30 days ago feels like a character from a story you once read, familiar but no longer you. This is not metaphor. This is neurological fact. Your brain has restructured itself. You have completed something that 92% of people who attempt transformation never complete. You survived the first 72 hours when your old identity fought hardest to reclaim control. You navigated the resistance dip when motivation faded and only systems kept you moving. You entered the lock-in phase and let automaticity take over operations that used to drain your willpower. The neural pathways are myelinated. The habit cluster is integrated. The identity evidence vault contains proof that cannot be argued with. You have shifted realities. But here is what nobody tells you about living in a new timeline. Maintenance looks nothing like installation. The effort that got you here is not the effort that keeps you here. And if you try to maintain your transformation with the same intensity you used to build it, you will burn out and drift backward. This final chapter is about sustainable residence in your new reality. How to keep what you have built without constant vigilance. How to recognize early warning signs of drift. And the single principle that determines whether this transformation lasts 30 years or fades in 30 weeks. Let me give you the maintenance protocol. During the 30-day installation, you ran the full reality lock protocol every morning. 7 minutes. 3 phases. Complete execution. This was necessary because you were building pathways that did not exist. Now those pathways exist. They do not need daily construction. They need periodic reinforcement. Here is the shift. Your daily practice reduces to what I call the identity anchor. This takes 90 seconds. Every morning, before anything else, you complete one sentence. I am someone who, followed by your core identity statement. Just one, the same one. Every day, this single sentence serves as a handshake between your conscious and subconscious mind. It confirms that the operating system is still running. It activates the habit cluster. It keeps the pathway warm. Research from the University of Wisconsin examined long-term habit maintenance and found that minimal daily reinforcement outperformed periodic intensive reinforcement. People who did a small identity-confirming action every day maintained changes at higher rates than people who did comprehensive weekly reviews. Frequency beats intensity in the maintenance phase. Your decision scripts no longer need conscious activation. They run automatically. But once per week, every Sunday evening works well. You review your top 3-4 points and confirm the scripts are still serving you. This takes 5 minutes. You are not rebuilding. You are auditing. Your environment interventions remain in place. You do not reset them daily. But once per month, you conduct a quick environment scan. Have any triggers crept back in? Has any friction been reduced in the wrong direction? Have any default positions shifted? 5 minutes. Monthly. Maintenance, not reconstruction. 90 seconds daily. 5 minutes weekly. 5 minutes monthly. That is the total maintenance cost of a transformed identity. Now let me show you the warning signs of drift. Your new identity is stable, but it is not invincible. Under certain conditions, old patterns can begin reactivating. If you catch drift early, correction is simple. If you ignore it, the old timeline can pull you back. Warning sign 1. Skipping the identity anchor and not noticing for multiple days. When you forget to run even the 90-second morning practice and only realize days later, your conscious engagement with your new identity is fading. The pathway is cooling. Warning sign 2. Decision scripts requiring conscious effort again. If 4 points that had become automatic start feeling like choices again. If you notice yourself deliberating where you used to execute, the automaticity is weakening. Warning sign 3. Environment triggers returning without resistance. If you find your phone back on your nightstand, junk food back in the pantry, or distraction tabs open on your browser, and you cannot remember deciding to reverse those interventions, your environment is being reclaimed by old patterns. Warning sign 4. The negotiation voice returning. Remember day 2? The voice that offered reasonable sounding exits? If that voice reappears, suggesting you have earned a break, that the system is no longer necessary, that you have changed enough, your old identity is testing the boundaries. Any one of these signs is not cause for alarm. It is cause for attention. The correction is simple. Return to the full 7-minute reality lock protocol for 3 consecutive days. Re-engage the installation level practice until the pathway warms up again. Then resume maintenance mode. Here is the distinction that determines long-term success. Average performers treat warning signs as failures. They see drift beginning and conclude that the transformation did not work, that they are reverting to their true self. That change was temporary. This interpretation accelerates the drift. If you believe you are failing, you stop trying. If you stop trying, you actually fail. Elite performers treat warning signs as information. They see drift beginning and conclude that maintenance needs adjustment, that a stress event or life change has destabilized the system temporarily. That correction is required, not collapse. This interpretation halts the drift. If you believe correction is possible, you correct. If you correct, stability returns. Dr. Carol Dweck's research applies here with full force. A growth mindset treats setbacks as data points, not verdicts. A fixed mindset treats setbacks as revelations of permanent limitation. Your interpretation of drift determines whether drift becomes collapse or drift becomes correction. You will drift at some point. Everyone does. Life will destabilize your system. Stress will deplete your resources. Change will disrupt your environment. The question is not whether you will drift. The question is whether you will interpret drift as information or identity. Here is the single principle that makes transformation permanent. It is not consistency, though consistency matters. It is not environment design, though environment design matters. It is not even automaticity, though automaticity makes everything easier. The principle is this: your new identity must become the standard against which you measure deviation. Let me explain what this means. Before this transformation, your old identity was the baseline. When you tried new behaviors and failed, you returned to baseline. The old patterns were home. Failure meant going home. After this transformation, your new identity must become the baseline. When stress hits and you miss a day, the new patterns are what you return to. Your installed identity is home now. Drift means leaving home. This is a psychological inversion that no technique can manufacture. It happens when you have accumulated enough evidence, enough proof, enough lived experience in your new reality that the new reality feels more real than the old one. Research from the Identity-Based Motivation Lab at New York University found that permanent behavior change occurred only when participants began using their new identity as the reference point for self-evaluation. As long as the old identity remained the baseline. I'm someone who struggles with discipline, but I've been doing well lately. Change remained fragile. When the new identity became the baseline, I'm someone who shows up consistently, and I had a hard week. Change became durable. You are not your old identity having a good month. You are your new identity navigating life's challenges. This is the permanence principle. Make your new reality the home you return to, not the vacation you visit. One final distinction as we close. Average performers ask, how do I avoid going back to who I was? Elite performers ask, how do I keep becoming who I am capable of being? The first question is defensive. It assumes the old identity is the gravitational center and the goal is escape velocity. This framing keeps the old identity central. It gives the old identity power. It makes every day a fight against regression. The second question is expansive. It assumes the new identity is the foundation and the goal is continued construction. This framing makes the new identity central. It gives your current self power. It makes every day an opportunity for growth rather than a battle against collapse. You are not running from your past self. You are running toward your future self. The past self fades naturally when you stop looking backward to measure the distance. 30 days ago, you made a decision. You decided that repeating the same timeline was no longer acceptable, that the loop had run long enough, that somewhere, in a parallel branch of possibility, there was a version of you worth becoming. You learned that your life splits at fork points, that tiny decisions compound into different realities, that the person you become is not determined by grand gestures, but by daily defaults. You installed a new operating system, identity activation, decision scripts, environment architecture. You built the reality shift trinity and ran it until the pathways carved themselves into your brain. You survived day 3 when everything in you wanted to quit. You navigated the dip when nobody was watching and motivation had dried up. You let automaticity take over when your old self would have grabbed back control. And now you are here, in a new timeline, living as a new identity. Not because you wished hard enough or tried hard enough, but because you built systems that made transformation inevitable. The parallel self is no longer parallel. It is you. This is not the end of your transformation. It is the beginning of your residence in the life you chose. There will be challenges ahead. There will be drift to correct, environments to maintain, and fork points that test your scripts. But you have proven something that can never be unproven. You can shift realities. You have shifted realities. And you now possess the only tool that ever actually changes a human life. The knowledge that change is not something you hope for. It is something you install. Your next life was never motivation away. It was one decision closer. And you made that decision.